It was a bright Monday morning at Lincoln High School, a day that seemed like any other. Students were chatting in the hallways, lockers clanging, sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. Among them was a girl walking quietly, carrying her backpack. She moved with grace, careful to keep her head down. Her name was Steven Seagal. To most people, she was just another teenager, kind, polite, and focused on her studies. She didn't boast about her family, didn't flaunt her wealth or connections, and she certainly never mentioned her father, Steven Seagal. But some students, the ones who thrived on power and cruelty, noticed her. A group of them leaned against a locker, whispering and laughing to themselves. Their eyes followed Lily as she passed. One of them, a tall boy with a sneer, stepped forward. "Hey, look who it is," he said loudly, nudging his friends. "Think you're better than us?" Lily ignored them, keeping her pace steady. She had learned long ago that reacting only gave bullies more satisfaction. But that didn't stop them. Suddenly, one of the boys lunged forward, shoving her slightly. She stumbled, but caught herself. Another sneered and made a move to block her path. "Move," Lily said firmly, trying to stay calm. But before she could step aside, the unthinkable happened. One of the bullies, fueled by arrogance, kneed her directly in the face. The force knocked her off balance, and she fell to the ground. Pain exploded across her cheek, and a gasp echoed through the hallway. Students froze, their phones instinctively coming out of their pockets. Some rushed to help her, while others just watched, unsure if they should intervene. The bullies laughed. They thought they had won, that their act would go unnoticed, that no one would stop them. They didn't know who they were dealing with. Lily's hand went to her face as she slowly got up, wiping away tears not just of pain, but of disbelief. She looked at the boys and whispered under her breath, almost to herself. They have no idea. What the bullies didn't know, what no one in that hallway realized at that moment, was that her father was Steven Seagal, a man whose reputation in martial arts and action films was legendary. But more than that, he was a man who believed in honor, discipline, and protecting his family. And when he found out about this, things were about to change. What happened next shocked everyone standing in that hallway. Lily slowly got up, her hand pressed against her cheek, still stinging from the blow. Blood wasn't visible yet, but the pain radiated across her face like fire. Her backpack slipped slightly off her shoulder as she adjusted it, and she looked around. The hallway was silent. Students who had been nearby stopped in their tracks, unsure whether to intervene. Some whispered to friends. Others pointed their phones toward the scene, recording what had just happened. No one had expected the attack to be this intense, and yet no one moved fast enough to stop it. The bullies, however, felt untouchable. The tall boy with the sneer stepped closer, towering over Lily. "Ah, what's the matter?" he taunted. "Can't take a little push?" Lily took a deep breath, fighting back tears. Her voice was calm, even measured. "I don't want trouble," she said. "Just let me go." The bullies laughed, dismissive. "Let you go? You think you can tell us what to do?" One spat. "Who even are you?" For a moment, Lily hesitated. She knew she could say anything. She could call out her father's name and the situation would change instantly. But she refused. That was never how she wanted to handle bullies. "I'm just a student," she said softly. "I don't want to fight anyone." Her calmness only seemed to annoy them more. One of the boys shoved her lightly again, and a friend of his stepped in to block the path behind her. "Look at this," the tall boy sneered to his friends. "She's trying to act all tough now. Pathetic." Some students were starting to whisper among themselves, clearly uneasy. "This isn't right," one said, holding up their phone. Another muttered, "Should we tell a teacher?" Lily, however, stood her ground. She refused to let fear dictate her reaction. Every step, every breath was controlled, deliberate, a quiet declaration that she wouldn't let these kids dominate her. The bullies, emboldened by the hesitation of bystanders, began laughing louder. "Come on," one said. "We're just having fun." It was clear to anyone watching that this wasn't just typical teasing anymore. The tension was palpable, and Lily's friends exchanged anxious glances. Her best friend whispered, "Are you okay? Do you want me to get a teacher?" Lily shook her head. "I can handle this," she said firmly. "Just stay back." The crowd was growing. Phones were out, live streams had already started, and a few students even began murmuring about the violence. But the bullies didn't care. They thought the hallway was their stage, that no one could stop them, that Lily was just another target. Have you ever witnessed bullying like this? Comment below and tell us which country or city you're watching from. Let's see where our community is tuning in from. At that moment, Lily's composure began to send a message to the students around her. She wasn't scared, and she wasn't giving them the reaction they wanted. Her calm defiance created a tension of its own, one that the bullies hadn't anticipated. But the story was far from over. What the bullies didn't know, what the teachers hadn't realized, and what the other students had yet to figure out, was who Lily's father was, and the consequences of this act were about to be far greater than anyone could imagine. Her voice remained steady, almost whispering under her breath. They have no idea. Not yet. The camera phones continued to record, but soon, it wouldn't just be the students watching. The world was about to see a lesson in strength, restraint, and justice. What happened next shocked everyone in that hallway, and it all started with a single, powerful presence. Lily's cheek throbbed with pain, the dull ache spreading across her face like fire. She steadied herself against the locker, taking slow, controlled breaths. Her heart raced, not just from the pain, but from the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Around her, students whispered in hushed tones, some recording the scene, others frozen in shock. The bullies, thinking the fight was over, smirked and exchanged high fives. They didn't notice the way Lily's eyes narrowed, the way her body seemed to radiate a quiet, unwavering strength. Every time they looked at her, they expected fear, tears, or submission. They got neither. "Ha, look at her trying to act tough now," the tall boy said, stepping closer. "You think anyone cares about you?" Lily straightened her back and met his gaze. Her voice was calm, even, but carried a weight that made the bullies hesitate. "I don't want trouble," she said firmly. "Just leave me alone." The words, though soft, were steady and unwavering. A few students whispered, impressed by her composure. Some even leaned closer with their phones, eager to capture the moment. One of the bullies shoved her again, harder this time, and a collective gasp echoed through the hallway. Lily stumbled, but didn't fall. Instead, she planted her feet, grounded herself, and lifted her head. "You're not going to get away with this," she said, her voice low but clear. "What you did was wrong. You think it's funny, but it's not. And someday, someone will hold you accountable." The tall boy scoffed. "What, like your dad or something? Nobody cares about him." Lily's best friend, standing just a few feet away, whispered urgently, "Lily, maybe we should just leave." But Lily shook her head. "No, I can't just let them think this is okay." She clenched her fists, not in anger, but in quiet determination. Her body language said everything. She would not be humiliated, she would not back down, and she would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. The bullies looked around, sensing the shift in energy. Something in Lily's presence made them uneasy. They didn't understand it, but instinctively, they knew she was different from the other kids they had bullied before. A small crowd of students had gathered, some murmuring words of support, others simply holding their phones, recording every second. One student whispered, "She's amazing. Look at how calm she is." The tension escalated further when one of the bullies stepped directly into Lily's personal space, smirking. "You think standing there like a hero will save you? You're just one girl. Nobody will do anything." Lily met his gaze evenly. "I may be just one person," she said, her voice steady, "but I will not let someone hurt me or anyone else and get away with it. You made a choice, and choices have consequences." The bullies exchanged uncertain glances. Their confidence, once unshakable, was beginning to crack. Lily's calmness, her refusal to react with fear or anger, was unnerving them. Her friend whispered again, "Lily, are you sure about this?" She nodded slightly, wiping away a tear that had formed at the corner of her eye. "Yes, I won't give them the satisfaction." It was then that one of the bystanders, a student who had been recording the whole thing, leaned over and whispered, "Are you related to Steven Seagal?" The bullies froze, but Lily didn't respond. She stayed composed, not confirming, not denying. She knew that the moment she revealed her identity, the hallway would erupt. But she also knew she didn't need her father's fame to prove her strength. Her courage was enough. The bullies, unaware of the truth, continued to mock her, trying to maintain their bravado. But their movements were slightly hesitant now, their laughter forced. Every step Lily took, every word she spoke, made them question their actions. If this happened in front of you, what would you do? Would you step in to help? Stay silent, or call someone for help? Type stand up if you'd protect someone, or stay silent if you'd walk away. Lily's inner strength seemed almost tangible. Students leaned in, some whispering encouragement, others simply watching in awe. Even the teachers, who had arrived late to the scene, paused as they tried to assess the situation. The bullies, now realizing they might have underestimated her, backed away slightly. But one of them, still trying to save face, muttered, "Whatever. She's just a kid. Let's go." Lily didn't flinch. Her voice remained steady, carrying across the hallway. "You think this is over? It's not about me. It's about understanding that hurting someone else isn't funny. One day, you'll understand." As the bullies finally walked away, muttering to themselves, the crowd slowly dispersed, murmuring about what had just happened. Phones continued to record, capturing not just the attack, but the strength, poise, and courage Lily had displayed in the aftermath. Though she was still in pain, Lily held her head high. She knew that what mattered wasn't revenge, nor the fear she could instill. It was integrity. It was standing tall when others expected her to fall. And though the bullies didn't know it yet, the story wasn't over, not by a long shot. The moment the bullies thought they'd won, they had no idea what was about to come next. And the hallways of Lincoln High had slowly returned to their usual rhythm, though whispers lingered in the air like a shadow. Students exchanged glances, some still clutching their phones, watching playback of the earlier incident on their screens. Lily walked quietly to her locker, every step measured, every movement controlled. Though her cheek throbbed from the knee, her composure never wavered. Her best friend, Maya, fell in step beside her. "Lily, are you okay?" "That was insane," she said softly. Lily nodded. "I'm fine. Painful, yes, but fine. The important thing is that I didn't give them the satisfaction. I stayed calm." Maya's eyes widened. "Calm? You just got kneed in the face. Calm? Seriously?" Lily smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Being calm doesn't mean I'm weak. It means I'm stronger than the anger they tried to provoke." The hall remained tense. Word of the incident had spread quickly, and some students whispered in corners, replaying the footage over and over. Others exchanged shocked glances. "Did you see that? She didn't even cry. She stood up to them." Meanwhile, the bullies sat in the cafeteria, still nursing bruised egos. Their laughter had faded, replaced by uncertainty and fear, though none of them knew why. Something about Lily's quiet confidence unsettled them more than any argument or fight could have. Back home, the atmosphere was different. The moment Lily walked through the front door, her father, Steven Seagal, looked up from the kitchen. His presence was commanding, though quiet. Years of martial arts mastery and action movie stardom had given him an aura few could ignore, even in casual surroundings. "Dad," Lily began, carefully. "Something happened today at school." She described the incident, the shove, the knee, the mocking, and the laughter. She recounted every detail with precision, her voice calm but tinged with the sting of embarrassment. Steven listened silently, eyes narrowing slightly as he processed the story. He didn't raise his voice, didn't yell, didn't make threats. He simply let the words settle, absorbing the situation fully, before responding. "Are you hurt?" he asked quietly. "I'm fine," she said, though she touched her cheek instinctively. "It hurts, yes, but I wasn't scared, Dad. I didn't let them see me scared." Steven nodded, a faint smile on his lips. "Good. That's exactly how you should handle things like this. Calm and controlled. Fear is the weapon they want you to use against yourself. You didn't give it to them." Lily hesitated. "But what about them? Should I tell anyone? Or do something?" Steven took a deep breath, his gaze steady and firm. "Violence isn't the answer, Lily. Reacting with anger would only make the situation worse. But there's a lesson here for them. They need to understand respect. That's what I'll make sure of. Not with my fists first, but with authority and presence. They won't forget this day. Back at school the next morning, the atmosphere was already buzzing. Students whispered, trying to piece together the story. "Did you see her yesterday?" one asked. "The one who got attacked? She didn't even cry." Others murmured, "Her father? Isn't he Steven Seagal?" The bullies, oblivious to the rumors, strutted through the hallway, trying to appear confident. But the whispers following them grew louder with every step. Then, a subtle shift occurred. Teachers, alerted to the previous day's incident, had called in. A calm but imposing presence entered the school grounds. Students instinctively made space as a tall man with a commanding aura walked through the hallway. His movements were precise, deliberate, and silent, but the effect was unmistakable. The bullies, too, noticed. "Who's that?" one whispered nervously. It didn't take long for the whispers to spread. "That's Steven Seagal," a student muttered. "Lily's dad, the action movie star, martial arts master. He's here." For the first time, the bullies faltered. The smirk they had worn for days vanished, replaced by unease and fear. Their bravado wavered under the weight of a presence they hadn't expected. Lily stayed beside them, calm as ever. She didn't need to say anything. Her father's presence spoke volumes. Years of discipline, mastery, and experience radiated from him, filling the hallway with an energy that was impossible to ignore. Steven glanced at Lily, nodding subtly. No words were exchanged, but the message was clear. Integrity, calmness, and respect matter more than fear or intimidation. The bullies, realizing the magnitude of the situation, began to step back, muttering excuses and glances of panic. They had misjudged Lily, misjudged the environment, and worst of all, misjudged the consequences of their actions. Lily's friends and the bystanders watched in awe, whispering, "She's lucky. Or maybe she's just strong." Steven remained calm, silent, and observant, not seeking confrontation, but commanding respect simply by existing. The bullies still had no idea what was coming next, and when it finally happened, it would be a lesson they'd never forget. The next morning, Lincoln High was buzzing with rumors. Students whispered in the hallways, trading fragments of yesterday's story like carefully guarded secrets. "Did you see her yesterday?" someone said. "Lily didn't even cry. And her dad, isn't he Steven Seagal?" Inside the school office, the bullies were already anxious. The fear that had begun to creep in yesterday had only grown overnight. They tried to act normal, pretending their laughter and arrogance were still intact. But it was clear to everyone around them, even the younger students, that they were tense, unsure, and vulnerable. Then, the calm authority appeared. Steven Seagal stepped into the hallway, moving silently yet deliberately, his presence commanding attention. It wasn't loud or aggressive. It was the quiet, undeniable aura of someone who had mastered both body and mind. Teachers instinctively straightened, students instinctively parted, and the bullies froze in place. For the first time, they realized just how serious things had become. Steven's gaze scanned the hallway, pausing on Lily. She stood tall, calm, and composed. Her cheek still bore the faint mark of the knee, but her posture radiated quiet confidence. She didn't need to say a word. Her father's presence alone amplified the lesson she had already begun to teach. Strength is not in aggression, but in composure. The tallest bully, the one who had kneed her, tried to smile, but it came out, forced, shaky. Hey, we were just joking," he stammered. Steven's eyes locked on him. They were calm, but intense, like steel honed to perfection. "Joking?" he asked, his voice low, steady, and deliberate. "You call violence a joke?" The bully opened his mouth, then closed it again. Words failed him. He could feel the weight of authority, experience, and discipline pressing down, and he had no idea how to respond. "Yesterday, you thought you were powerful," Steven continued, his voice calm yet commanding. "You thought you could intimidate someone smaller than you, and that no one would care. You thought that hurting someone would make you stronger. But you were wrong." The hallway was silent. Every student, teacher, and bystander felt the shift in energy. It was impossible to ignore the quiet, unshakable control of a man who had spent decades mastering both martial arts and discipline. "You've learned nothing about respect," Steven said, taking a slow step closer. "You've mocked, you've pushed, you've attacked, And now you will understand something very important. Actions have consequences. The bullies shifted nervously. Their confidence from yesterday had completely vanished. One of them muttered, We didn't know it would. We didn't mean." Steven didn't raise his voice, didn't threaten, didn't show anger. He simply continued, calm and deliberate. "Violence is not strength. Fear is not respect. True strength is control, the ability to act with honor, even when provoked. You will apologize, you will take responsibility, and you will learn that your choices affect others." The words landed like heavy stones. The bullies could feel the truth in them, even if they didn't yet understand it fully. The presence of someone who had lived a lifetime of mastery and discipline was overwhelming. Yet it was not an intimidation born of aggression. It was a quiet, absolute authority. One of the smaller students whispered, "I've never seen anyone like him." Lily's friends exchanged glances. Even the teachers seemed slightly awed, realizing that the lesson being taught here was far deeper than a simple reprimand. It was a lesson about life, integrity, and respect. Steven glanced at Lily again, nodding subtly. No words were exchanged, the message was clear. She had handled herself perfectly. Calm, controlled, resilient. Her courage had set the stage, and now the bullies would learn the consequences of underestimating someone, not through violence, but through presence, discipline, and dignity. The bullies, now visibly shaken, mumbled apologies, awkward and reluctant at first, but growing more sincere under the weight of Steven's gaze. "We're sorry, Lily. We didn't mean." "Enough," Steven said, his tone firm but not cruel. "Words are only meaningful when backed by understanding. Actions have weight. Remember this moment, the fear, the humility, and the lesson. Do not make the mistake of thinking you can hurt someone and walk away without learning anything." Lily, standing beside him, didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her calm composure and dignity had already spoken volumes. The bullies now understood, even if only instinctively, that they had underestimated not just her, but the lessons she had absorbed from her father's example. The hallway remained quiet, charged with the electric energy of respect, realization, and the undeniable truth. Strength without honor is weakness, and control is the ultimate power. The bullies had finally realized the gravity of their actions. But the story wasn't over. The final lesson, the one that would leave a mark on everyone present, was about to unfold. The hallway was silent. Every student, teacher, and bystander could feel the tension lingering in the air like a storm about to break. The bullies, who had spent the last 24 hours basking in imagined power, now trembled under a quiet authority they didn't expect. They had thought yesterday's attack would go unnoticed, that their bravado would intimidate everyone, but the truth was about to hit them like a punch they could never dodge. Steven Seagal stood tall, calm, and unwavering. His gaze swept over the group of teenagers who had tried to humiliate his daughter. Every step he took was deliberate, every movement measured. There was no anger in his face, no aggression in his tone, only the quiet, undeniable presence of a man who had mastered both body and mind. "Do you know who you're dealing with?" one of the smaller students whispered to a friend. The bullies laughed nervously, trying to act confident, but their smiles were weak, forced. The reality of the situation was sinking in. "Who cares?" the tall bully muttered. "She's just her dad, whatever." Steven's eyes locked on him, steady, piercing, and unyielding. "You're lucky," he said slowly, "that this isn't about revenge. That's not the way I teach my children, but you will learn about consequences, humility, and respect, and you will never forget this day." The words hit the bullies like a cold wave. They began to glance around, noticing for the first time how many students were watching. Phones were recording, whispers were spreading, and teachers had gathered, observing the lesson unfolding in real time. Their laughter, arrogance, and bravado had evaporated, replaced with fear and unease. One of the bullies, still trying to salvage some dignity, muttered, We didn't know her dad. We didn't mean." Steven stepped closer, not aggressively, but with a weight that made every word count. "You didn't know," he said. "Do you think ignorance excuses your actions? Do you think pretending it didn't matter will erase what you did?" The hallway seemed to hold its breath. The bullies' faces went pale, their bravado crumbling under the quiet intensity of the man in front of them. Then it happened. One of the students in the back whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "That's Steven Seagal, Lily's dad, martial arts legend, movie star." The bully's eyes widened in shock. The laughter that had once been easy and mocking died instantly. Their knees felt weak, their confidence gone. They had mocked his daughter, attacked her, and now, the man standing before them was someone whose reputation preceded him worldwide. But even more than fame, there was the undeniable aura of discipline, mastery, and quiet authority that made the room feel smaller and the bullies feel insignificant. Steven didn't raise a fist, didn't shout. He simply let his presence speak. It was enough. The students around them could feel it, the bullies could feel it, and even the teachers could sense the weight of the moment. "Do you understand now?" Steven asked, softly but firmly. "It's not about fear. It's not about intimidation. It's about respect. Respect for others, for yourself, and for the consequences of your actions. You will apologize, you will learn, and you will remember that strength without control is nothing. Nothing at all." The tall bully swallowed hard, finally forcing out, We're sorry, Lily. We didn't mean to." "Enough," Steven said calmly. "Apologies are only meaningful if you understand why they are necessary. You will take responsibility for your actions. You will make amends. And you will never think you can hurt someone without consequences again." Lily stood beside him, her posture calm, her composure unwavering. She didn't need to say a word. Her courage, her dignity, and the way she had handled the situation yesterday had already spoken volumes. The bullies now understood, on a level far deeper than physical pain, that they had underestimated her, underestimated the situation, and underestimated the power of integrity. The crowd of students whispered among themselves. Phones continued to record, capturing the moment when arrogance met humility, when cruelty met discipline, and when fear met respect. Some students muttered, "I've never seen anyone handle a situation like that before." "Have you ever seen someone stay completely calm under pressure like this?" Type discipline if you believe true strength is about self-control, not anger. The bullies, their faces pale and expressions broken, realized the truth. They had been defeated without a single punch thrown. Their lesson had been learned not through force, but through presence, wisdom, and the quiet power of someone who lived by discipline. Steven's eyes softened slightly as he glanced at Lily. No words were needed. She had handled herself perfectly, had stood tall, and had shown courage that went beyond any physical ability. The bullies had been humbled, the crowd inspired, and a lesson about respect and integrity had been etched into everyone's memory. As the hallway slowly returned to its usual rhythm, the bullies slunk away, shaken, silent, and forever changed. Students continued to whisper, awe evident in their voices. "She's lucky. Or maybe it's not just luck. Maybe she's strong, just like him." And in that moment, one thing was clear. Strength is measured not by fists or fear, but by courage, composure, and the ability to teach a lesson without striking a blow. The bullies had finally understood the lesson, but the story wasn't over yet. The world was about to see just how far integrity and courage can reach. The hallway at Lincoln High was finally quiet, though the echoes of yesterday's events lingered like an unshakable shadow. Students whispered to each other, replaying videos from phones, comparing reactions, and discussing the remarkable scene they had just witnessed. Some laughed nervously, some gasped again at the calm authority displayed by Steven Seagal, and some simply shook their heads in awe. For Lily, the aftermath was surreal. She had stood tall, faced cruelty without fear, and had witnessed a lesson in discipline and respect unfold right before her eyes. Her cheek still tingled from the attack, a faint mark as a reminder of yesterday's struggle. But her pride and composure were intact. She had handled herself perfectly, and now, the bullies had learned a lesson they would never forget. Steven Seagal stood beside her, his calm, commanding presence a shield of reassurance. He didn't need to speak. Lily had already absorbed the lesson. True strength was not in striking back, but in maintaining composure, dignity, and honor. He gave her a subtle nod, acknowledging her courage. That nod alone felt like a victory, a recognition that no amount of bullying could shake her. Meanwhile, the bullies were scattered, pale-faced, and shaken. They avoided eye contact, their earlier arrogance replaced by fear and humility. They had experienced firsthand the power of discipline and presence, realizing that arrogance and cruelty only expose weakness. Word of the incident spread like wildfire. By the end of the day, videos from students' phones had gone viral online. Clips of Lily calmly standing her ground, Steven Seagal entering the hallway, and the bullies' shocked expressions circulated on social media, garnering millions of views. Comments poured in from around the world, praising Lily's bravery and Steven Seagal's calm authority. People were inspired by the lesson. Courage doesn't always roar sometimes. It stands quietly, unwavering, and transforms fear into respect. News outlets picked up the story. Headlines read, "Steven Seagal's daughter stands tall against bullies. Lesson in discipline goes viral. Martial arts legend's calm presence teaches bullies a powerful lesson. Strength, composure, and respect." What Lincoln High students learned the hard way. Lily returned home that evening, exhausted but proud. Her father placed a hand on her shoulder, a rare smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "You did well today," he said softly. "You showed courage and composure, exactly what I hoped you would." She looked up at him, a mixture of relief and admiration in her eyes. "I learned from the best," she said quietly. "But I also realized something. You didn't have to hit anyone to teach a lesson. That's real strength." Steven's smile widened. "Exactly. Discipline and presence often speak louder than force. You've already shown that, and now the world has too." At school, the aftermath continued. The bullies faced consequences, suspensions, mandatory apologies, and reflection assignments. But the real lesson was beyond punishment. They had learned humility, respect, and the power of integrity, lessons that could shape their lives if they chose to remember them. Students who had recorded the incident posted updates, sharing reflections and praising Lily's courage. "She's an example of how to handle adversity," one comment read. "Strength isn't about fighting back. It's about staying calm and standing tall." Soon, the story reached social media circles across the globe. From New York to Tokyo, London to Sydney, people shared clips, commentary, and reflections. Millions celebrated the courage of a young girl who refused to be intimidated, and the quiet, commanding presence of a father who taught a lesson without raising a hand. Even beyond the viral attention, the story left a lasting impression. Students at Lincoln High began to reflect on their own actions, understanding that bullying wasn't just about physical power, it was about choices, respect, and accountability. And somewhere, the bullies themselves began to reconsider how they treated others. Lily's quiet strength, combined with her father's calm authority, had created a ripple effect far greater than anyone could have imagined. It was a lesson in courage, in integrity, and in the power of composure, a lesson that would not be forgotten by anyone who witnessed it. If you believe bullying should never be ignored and that true strength comes from courage and self-control, type "respect" in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories that show how dignity and courage can change the world. Lily looked around at the students filming, whispering, and discussing the incident. She realized that courage didn't always need a spotlight sometimes. It simply needed to stand tall, quietly, and let integrity do the talking. And as Steven Seagal stood beside her, the world finally understood. Strength without honor is meaningless. Fear is temporary. But courage, discipline, and respect leave a legacy that lasts forever. In the end, the bullies learned humility, the students learned respect, and Lily learned something even more important, that courage and composure can make anyone unstoppable.